Let us pay our respects for these teachings and explanations to the Buddha and Master Zhen Yan by making 3 sincere bows. Please rise. Palms together. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Can everyone, Brother Joe, please start. Can.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's that time again. It's September 30th. It's the last day of the month. If we look back into what we have done in the past month, actually, just as Master said, that time and our life and accomplishments are actually accumulated through every second and every minute. And I'm sure there are many great things that have happened in the past month, as well as many great disasters. Of course, though, let us keep our very pious and sincere heart and mind, and hoping that all the sufferings in the world can be reduced. And while at the same time, we will continue to review all the wondrous Lotus Sutra had to offer through Master Cheng Yen's teachings and Dharma talks. So today, we are going to first look into what we had said last week as part of the review. So last week we talked about the review of the chapter 15, whereas now we're into the chapter 16. So last week we did a more of a overall review of the entire chapter 15, including how we got here and what the meaning of the chapter 15 was about. And of course, we talked about the 3 bodies of the Buddha, which was discussed at length a couple of weeks ago also. So that was the last week was the second time that we talked about the 3 bodies of the Buddha. And essentially, we talked about how the body of the Dharma itself remains the same, while the reward body, as well as the manifestation, they all have their different functions. And we talked about how that, in contrast and in parallel, can be viewed, for example, to be like Tzu Ji, and how the different logos or the uniform actually represent a particular reward body, whereas the representation and an embodiment of Tzu Ji itself is embodied by the master herself or the organization. And then the Dhamma itself, the Dhammakaya itself, never changes. It's actually much greater than that. So that's the 2 parts, the 2 topics that we covered last week. But before, so this is this week's summary. So this week we're going to talk about continuing onto chapter 16, and we're going to talk about the boundless space and time. And the second one is a little bit more cryptic. It's about neither here nor there, not coming nor going. And we're going to talk about what that means. But before we go on, there has to be a correction. And that's something that brought to my attention through our brothers and sisters from multiple centers. And this is something that I have taken very seriously, in that even though I tend to try to put a different light, or I try to explain things in a way that I look at it myself as I can understand, so others can hopefully can understand. Sometimes I use different ways to explain, and hoping that people can see me. However, it is still imperative that when I talk about definition, that I get them right. And it is through my careless mistake that I have mixed up the 3 bodies. So the Dhammakaya itself is the body of enlightenment, and that is the same. Body of enlightenment and truth, and that is the same. However, I mixed up on the 2 bodies, which is the Sambhogakaya, which is the body of reward, and Nirmanakaya, which is the body of various transformation. And I have got these 2 mixed up, and for that I have caused unintended misunderstanding for all those of you that have took the time to look it up, and for all those of you that took the time to let me know of my mistakes. I appreciate your effort, and I'm openly repenting to everybody, to all of you that have heard what I have said that was wrong. I'm openly repenting. And for all those of you that have not yet know or didn't realize that I got it wrong, I repent as well. And all of this, I'm hoping, is to save me from 500 years of being a fox. But anyway, that's not the main point. The main point is I got the correction, and I make sure that this is exactly what we wanted, is that let's have this interaction. You know, this is my point of view, and I don't get it right all the time. It's a perspective where, you know, it takes all of our various transformation merging together, and that's when our treasure stupa, the treasure tower, will open. Is when we put all of our minds together, all the various transformation together. Only then will the door to the tower open, and we will be able to see both the Buddha of the past and the Buddha of the present and the future. So thank you for all those of you that want to look up more. And there's indeed a lot of literature online that you could go and check. For all the things that I cover here, if you feel that it's not deep enough, and usually I don't want to go into deep, then you can always look up the literatures online. But the most important thing is always ask yourself the question is, how does this pertain to me, and how would it affect me, and how would it change me, and how can I explain to other people when they have neither the background nor expertise that you now have after you have gone through all the literature? How would you explain to them in their languages? And that's always something that I ask myself when I become very excited about something new that Master had shared and brought to us. So let's move on to the first part, which is the boundless space and time. And this is something that I wanted to cover, because at the beginning, in the beginning of this chapter, what we have gone through is a very symbolic story or analogy or parable. It's an analogy that the Buddha wanted everyone to understand just how much time and how big of a space that that he was talking about. How impossibly for imagine. So this is what was said from the sutra. Suppose a person were to take 500, 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 Nayuta Asakya, 1,000 millionfold worlds, and grind them to dust. Now, going through all these numbers, right? 500, 1,000, 10,000, million. Okay, that's already numbers that we can actually count. And then it goes into these Nayuta Asamkhya, which is another different words that is trying to explain even bigger numbers that are not used all the time in our normal lives, but we have seen them many, many times repeatedly in the sutra. So grind all these worlds into dust. Okay, so this is a constellation, the map of the constellation. You can see that, and Master have always said that there's so many stars out there, and each one of these stars, including other planets that might go around them. Yes, there might or there might not be. So, for example, in our star is the sun, right? It's a solar system, and all the planets goes around it. And if we were to take all these, okay, not just our star, not just our planets, but all of these 500,000, 10,000, million, and Nayuta Asamkhya, a millionfold worlds, all of these, and grind them to dust. And what does that mean? Out of all these planets and stars, we grind them to dust. And this is a picture of a dust. Now, dust come in various sizes and shapes. And this one particular, it's a little bit, you could probably say it's about, the width is about maybe, 10 micrometers, but doesn't really matter how big it is. You want to reduce not even just the entire star. Let's talk about if we want to reduce the entire planet Earth to dust. Now, how many particles would that be, right? So for those of you mathematics buffs, you can go ahead and do the calculation. I'm not going to do it, but just letting you know how big of a difference between all these stars in the constellation, and then this particular particle the dust particle. So grind all of that into this very fine particle. Okay, and now the sutra continues. Then, moving eastward, each time he passes 500, 1,000, 10,000, a million Nayuta Asan worlds, he drops a particle of dust. Now, when I read this, when I read this, it's already expanding our mind. First of all, you grind all of these 500,000, 10,000 million Nayuta Asankhya worlds, and you grind all of that into dust. So I don't know where you're going to put those dust, but it apparently is very, very big, a big pile of dust. Now you're going to move east. I don't know how we're able to find where east is when we have ground all those planets and all the worlds into dust. But anyway, suppose there's a big pile, and suppose you still know where east is. You move that way and you continue to walk. And every time you pass, even greater, this is a huge number of worlds. Every time you pass is by this many worlds, you drop one particle. And you continue this way until you finish dropping all the particles. Now, the number gets greater and greater. This is called exponentially growing, okay? Exponentially growing. So somebody going through all east of all of these constellations, and you drop one dust. And then you continue again, and you drop one. You continue again, you drop one, until all the dust is gone. Okay? That's how big the space and the worlds that the Buddha had been to. And so the sutra continued. Good man, can the total number of all these worlds be imagined or calculated? I think it should be reversed. Can the total number of all these worlds be calculated? Well, obviously not. Can it be imagined? I don't even think it can be imagined. It's so yeah, numerically we can try to sort of see, but can you imagine how big that is or how great that is? I don't even think that we can understand how big Grand Canyon is, but let alone all these worlds put together. So my response to hear this is, Buddha is calling us good men, and I would say, oh, good Lord, I don't think I can imagine what it is. Don't call me good man. I'm going to call you good Lord, because I don't know I can imagine that. But the Buddha is not finished. He's not done. So he continued. Good man. Okay, good man. Now I will state this to you clearly. Suppose all these worlds, okay, now going back to all the analogy we just talked about, all the places that we have traveled, all these worlds, whether they received a particle of dust or not. So the Buddha knew, and from this sutra verse, that he knew that even if we were to follow the rules set out by the Buddha, we're going to miss one or two, because the dust is so many, and we're going to miss some of these worlds. Okay, so he knew, even though he laid out the rules out for us, but some of us, we're going to skip. Like, no, I'm going to skip these worlds. But so suppose all these worlds, whether they receive a particle of dust or not, are once more reduced to dust. I don't know what is it with Buddhism and dust, but this is what they like a lot. They always use the idea of the dust to try to represent something that's very, very great. So all of these, okay, all the dust that you had and all the worlds that you didn't grind to dust are now all reduced to dust. Let one of each dust particle represent one kalpa. Now that's even greater, okay? What we had just done was taking one of these 100,000, 10,000 million Nayuta Asankhya number of worlds and reduce to dust. And then we go east and going through even countless, even much greater number of worlds. And now we reduce all of that to dust. And each one represents one kalpa. And if you're good in math, you'll probably calculate what one kalpa, how many years that is. And that's calculable. Okay, you can actually calculate that. So one of those particles is one kalpa. And Buddha's not finished. He said, the time that has passed since I attained Buddhahood surpasses this time by 100,000, 10,000, a million Nayuta Asankhya Kalpas. So he's saying that even that number that you had just tried to imagine but failed, even that number isn't enough to explain how long ago the Buddha had already attained Buddhahood. And why did I begin with this? Why did I begin with this? Well, truthfully, I didn't begin with this. Buddha didn't begin with this. Buddha began with what? This is something that's beyond what we can imagine. It's already more than we can imagine. And Buddha added onto that and said, well, that's beyond what you can imagine. And let me tell you, the truthful time is even greater what you can imagine, what you cannot imagine. It's so boundless, so big, that it's already at a place and time that we cannot imagine. But the truthful time is even greater than that, what we can't imagine. I didn't begin with this. Buddha didn't either. For chapter 16, how did Buddha begin? Buddha began by saying this. At that time, Buddha spoke to the Bodhisattvas, all the great assembly. Good man, you must believe and understand the truthful words of the thus come one, which is the Buddha. And again, he said to the great assembly, you must believe and understand the truthful words of the thus come one. And once more, and I kid you not, if you go into the sutra, this is what exactly was said. And once more, he said to the great assembly, you must believe and understand the truthful words of the thus come one. What does that mean? It means that before we come into chapter 16, he knew, the Buddha knew that it would be very, very difficult to understand. And it would be very, very difficult to believe. And not even that, it would be very, very difficult to imagine. See, if I tell you that I have wings and I can fly, you might not believe me, but you can imagine what it would look like if I have wings and I can fly. Something like this, it's not even just understanding. It's not even just believing. It's way beyond imagination. And for something that is already beyond our belief and imagination, you need to believe and you need to have faith. And that's why the Buddha began by saying three times. And that was after, that was in response to the pleading of Manjushri, of Maitreya, so that Buddha can actually explain just how long ago, just how many worlds that the Buddha had already been to. Do you choose to believe or not? That is up to you. So boundless space and time, beyond what we can imagine, beyond that, can you believe? And then Buddha said yesterday, or that Buddha didn't say yesterday, but Buddha said in the sutra, and we covered this yesterday, ever since then, well, that was how long ago? Ever since then, this was following the sentence about the time. Okay, it was after grinding all to dust, and then the Buddha said, I have attained Buddhahood. Long before that, it was 110,000, 10,000 million Nayuta Asankhya Kalpas before that. So ever since then, Buddha said, I have been constantly in this Saha world, preaching the law, teaching, and converting. And for this statement to ring, to have the strong sense of purpose and responsibility, you need to understand when was since then, when was then. And that tells you really just how long ago this was. And obviously, yesterday, the Buddha also said, and elsewhere, I have led and benefited living beings in hundreds, thousands, 10,000, millions of Nayuta and Asankhya of lands. So this will now begin our second part. But before we go on to the second part, I want to really do a small wrap up here that this is just about how big and how long, bigger and much greater and much longer than any words that we can explain. And therefore, the Buddha must use stories to explain how big it is. And even when he uses a story to explain how big it is, we can't understand it. Well, we can try to understand, but it would be very difficult for us to sort of imagine what it is and how big it is. Okay, so that's what I want to wrap up, the boundless time and space. And for us that we fail to imagine how big it was, we just have to believe that that's the case because he's already told us to believe. So now the second part. So where exactly is the Buddha? The Buddha says, ever since attaining Buddhahood, the Buddha had been constantly in this Saha world, preaching the law and teaching and converting. Yet, elsewhere, the Buddha also led and benefited living beings in all of these lands and all of these countries and all of these worlds. So where exactly is the Buddha? Is the Buddha always constantly here in the Saha world, or is the Buddha in elsewhere leading and benefiting all the sentient beings in all those worlds? So that's where we begin. Neither here nor there, not coming nor going. What are we talking about? So this brings us back to Trikaya again. The Dhammakaya is the body of enlightenment and truth, and that is something that will never changes. Yet the body of reward, the body that we saw as the Buddha, was only for 80 years. It was only for 80 years, and in our human realm, in the human form, it was the body of reward that we saw as Shakyamuni, the prince Shakyamuni, and he became enlightened. And for 80 years, he lived in this world, in the Saha world, in the form that we came to realize and recognize, and in the body that we all have sort of seen the picture of, and that was the Sambhogakaya. However, the Nirmanakaya says that there are bodies of various transformations, all emanations, all in all these different worlds. And this is very important because this is what Master said about where is the Buddha exactly. Okay, even though the Dharma comes and goes, this is in the words of Master. Buddha said, I have been constantly in this Saha world preaching the law and teaching and converting. He didn't go anywhere, but he was coming and going. See, that was the answer, right? Neither here nor there, neither going nor coming, neither coming nor going, right? So this is exactly, seems to be very paradoxical statement, right? He didn't go anywhere, but he was coming and going. So where was he going? Well, let me tell you more, right? So the Master was already trying to explain this to our very limited mind. Buddha didn't go anywhere, but he was coming and going among all the worlds. He was never resting, continued to preach and convert. He didn't go anywhere, but he was coming and going. Okay, so exactly, if he didn't go anywhere, why was he coming and going? Okay, so this is what Master said. The person never left, but the teachings and the principles, according to the capacity of the people, then that's what we heard today, the capacity of the people, have been corners of the world. And this is not just one world, but this is many, 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 many worlds, right? So the person that we have come to recognize as the Buddha never left, always in the Saha world. But the teachings and the principles, according to the capacity of the people, have been spread to all corners of the world. Master continued, Buddha didn't leave the Saha world, but the principles continue to be applied on the Bodhisattva path to transform the sentient beings. So I guess Master also realized that if she said that Buddha didn't go anywhere, yet it was still coming and going among all the worlds, Master needed to explain further about what exactly does that mean. If you didn't go anywhere, how did you go between among all the worlds? So the idea was Buddha didn't leave the world, but the principles continue to be applied. So in a way, that the spirit was already into a different world. So that was basically what the reward body and the transformation body was the difference. There are all the different places that you can see. So this is something that I feel if we didn't have the opportunity to be in Tzu Chi, we probably don't understand this idea quite much. However, because we're in Tzu Chi, in the very short 50 years half a century, we get to see what this particular statement means, because this is Taiwan, and this is Taiwan, and many of you will be coming to Hualien. Welcome from US and Malaysia. US will probably be here next week, or very soon, almost 2 weeks, 10 days, and Malaysia will be here in a month time. Okay, almost a month, and this is Taiwan. And if we didn't have Tzu Chi, if we didn't have Master Chen Yan, it would be very difficult for us to see how a person didn't leave this place yet. The ideals and the spirit of Tzu Chi and the ideals of Tzu Chi, the principle of Tzu Chi can actually spread to all the different parts of the world, right? 94 countries in the world already have footprints of Tzu Chi volunteers. The 94 of these places, right? And 56 of these places already have the seeds of Tzu Chi planted in there. And what does that mean? It means true. Master didn't have to go to all these places. Master indeed only stayed in Taiwan, just like the Buddha said, right? The Buddha says he never left the Saha world. But then how did the other worlds get the teachings? How were the people benefited? Well, there you go. Master had never been to Haiti, but Haitians were benefited. Master had never been to Africa, but Africans were benefited. Right next to your homes, all the people that are connected right now, 99% of you, the country that you are in right now, Master have not been there. But yes, there are so many people that are benefited because of her. That was exactly what Master was saying. So can you see that this is not believable? No, it is absolutely believable, because we are walking this path right now, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And because of Master, what she was trying to do was to show that this was exactly possible. If you were just reading the sutra, you would be hard-pressed to think, wait a minute, if you are not going and if you're always here, then how are you going and coming between all the worlds? Well, there you go. This is exactly how it was possible. Master had done it. So we are once again at a juncture, at a point where we're thinking it's impossible because it's limited in our minds. Our minds are limited to believe what we want to believe and believe what we see and believe what we can touch. But this is about converting that into wisdom, converting unbelievable into believable, into faith, into something that we can actually achieve and we can actually do. What gives Master the purpose that by staying in Taiwan can actually spread the Dharma and teachings all over? What gives her the belief that can be done? From the sutra. She saw from the sutra that yes, the Buddha stayed in the Saha world, but still was able to benefit all the sentient beings in other worlds. She took comfort in knowing that was what the Buddha chose to do, and that was what the Buddha was destined to do, because the Buddha was the leader of all the beings and the father of all the beings of the Saha world. So Master chose to stay, not going anywhere, because she knew that was exactly what the Buddha had done too. So that was something that I want to share with you. And to add on some more extras, as we still have a little bit of time, I want to share with you the 3 days without Dharma. This sounds really, really gloomy and really dark, but for 3 days, okay, so we have these duties here at the abode. So for 3 days, I was part of the duty that have to help set up the tables and clean up all these things in the morning. And this was at the same time where the Dharma talk was. And for 3 consecutive days, I did not show up and I wasn't there. And even though afterwards I will always get the notes and get the transcript, I read them, and it's something that was lacking. And at the end of the 3rd day, actually at the end of the 2nd day, I went to a meeting, and this is a meeting where with the volunteers in the community, and you probably know that sometimes the meeting don't go too well and people are not very happy. And usually in these meetings, as representatives from the from the religious office or 宗教处, that we have the responsibility to try to solve and try to calm and try to try to find a way to help everybody, and we did. However, usually at the end I would be able to I would stand up and I would share some dharma with everybody about how we should look at these things. And honestly, that day I was dry. Yes, the situation wasn't really happy and wasn't really joyous, and I can't share with them about the joy of Dharma, but I was dry. I couldn't figure out what I want to say. There were so many things in my mind, but I don't know how to organize it and how to say it. And I come home and I think that, that was an opportunity for me to, with Dharma, to help everybody see through all the troubles that they're looking at. But I didn't have at that time. And so the next day, the third day, I had a chance to talk to the master, and I said, for 3 days I was doing the morning chore, and that's why I wasn't there. But I felt that it was vastly different. The difference being that sitting there, even though you might not hear everything, but there is more to our ears. The sound, it's just like the Dharma itself, coming out of the mouth of the master. It's more than just sounds. It's more than just words. So coming into our ears, it must be more than just words. But what is it? It's more than just words. It's how your heart and how your mind receive it. So for 3 days, even though I had the words written down, but the 3 days I had was without Dharma. Because Dharma is not just the words. It's the words and the feelings combined. So for 3 days, why was I dry? I wasn't dry without words. I was dry without feelings. My feelings were not connected to what the people were feeling. And so the words can't come out. So I share with Master how I felt that for 3 days, even though I know the words, even though I follow the words, but I felt that I had no Dharma. It's just like I share with her that it was just like the plant, where you can water the plant for 3 days, but without the sun, it will still wither. It's different. It's still the same plant. You give it water, but it's still different. And so Master replied, yes, she understood that for 3 days I wasn't able to hear completely, but that was important because you are Bohuato. You have no Dharma, and therefore you cannot convert other people. And so she told me that it's more important, it's very important to go with the heart. So that was what I wanted to share with everybody, that yes, all of you right now are listening through this technology, but it's even more so important to not just rely on the words, but to go with the feelings. The most important part isn't about the particular words. Okay, it's still important. Let me tell you, it's still important because the words need to come out to explain to other people. But how you receive it and how you understand it, a lot of it has to do with your mind and your heart. And a lot of it is not just your ears and your eyes. It's how you feel. So for those of you that are coming home soon, whether you're coming home for any reason, coming home to here at the abode, please take every opportunity you can to come to the abode in the morning. Yes, it's very early. Yes, and it might be in a language where you don't understand anything. But just to listen to the words, just like you're listening to opera, you don't understand the words, but you enjoy them. Same thing. Listen to the words and listen with your heart. Open up your mind. It's not what the word is meaning. It's what the word is trying to tell you, trying to touch you and reach out. Open your heart and mind and receive it. And that will be the day with Dharma. And you will not understand it. You might not know any words, but you will just walk out and you will feel like, wow, I felt right. So that was what I wanted to share with you today. And we're going to skip extra 2. I'll leave that to next time. So that's my sharing for today. And we are going to open up for the sharing from Singapore today. So please go ahead. Thank you. Thank you.
So, can I start? Okay. Hi. Good morning, everyone. Okay, my name is Jing, and I'm a volunteer from Singapore. So, Ghana for the opportunity to share today. I'd like to share about how the Xin Fa Xiang experience and my journey through Tzu Chi has changed my perspective. Hang on, sorry. Sorry, let me just fix this. What? 他讲我们的 camera settings 错。哦 ，OK。I grew up in the Theravada tradition of Buddhism, like many other Buddhists in the Southeast Asian tradition. And in the past, I used to learn from a Sri Lankan Bante, a monk. And I felt that I was like pretty connected to the Dharma, and I actually enjoyed learning about it. So when I heard about this thing about the great and the small vehicle, I actually at the time I felt a bit upset because I thought like, Theravada, we are actually in the small vehicle. But I felt that the Buddha's teachings are so wonderful. So why would they actually label us as small and then like Mahayana as great, right? Yeah, so I had this misconception. I never actually put in the time to clarify and figure out what Mahayana Buddhism was about. So years later, I got the affinity to attend a silent mentor program, and that was how I got to know about Tzu Chi. And since then, I think through the journey with volunteering with Tzu Chi and learning from Master and during the Xin Fa Xiang teachings, I actually learned how it was actually Buddha's intention for all of us to walk the Bodhisattva path to benefit the sentient beings. So maybe I would like to share about a dream that I had. That was like when I just started volunteering with Tzu Chi. So the setting of the dream was actually a war-torn country, which I've never been to, but the whole atmosphere was a very oppressive one. And I remember like hundreds and hundreds of people evacuating from the country, and and I was like at the side of the road, being one of like the ushers and ushering them away from danger. So then suddenly I caught sight of some of my friends, and then I was like overjoyed, and I went over to them and asked them like how they were doing and stuff. And to my surprise, they were actually like kind of oblivious to what was going on around, and they were just chit-chatting among themselves as if, like what we used to do like in a cafe, chit-chatting, and they were just walking along with the rest of the people. So I was very perplexed, and I just surprised that, how come they didn't know what was going on? And there's this whole disaster happening, and they appear to be totally oblivious of it. Yeah, so then I looked into the war zone, and it was just a very frightening sight, very dark, dusty, and then it's like those videos that you watch from the news, right? Yeah, and then like all there'll be a bit of shooting, bombings here and there. So, but somehow I knew that there were people inside who were like fighting and protecting us from danger, and I felt that perhaps I should be inside with them as well. But I think it was with a very heavy heart that I didn't actually have the courage and the confidence to go in. So I was just hanging around at this base camp kind of thing and wondering when would be my turn to be sent in, to face the disaster. Yeah, and all of a sudden there was this middle-aged gentleman who came to me, and he appeared so serene and peaceful and calm, and he just smiled at me and put something in my hand, and I looked down at the thing, and all of a sudden I just felt at peace and calm, and then I just woke up. So the thing that he put in my hand was actually, the Tzu Chi chanting bead, the one that glows in the dark. Yeah, so at that point in time, I actually didn't understand anything. It was just like a weird dream that happened. But after learning more about Tzu Chi, and learning about Master's teaching, I felt that, perhaps this whole disaster war zone thing is the world of the five capabilities that she was talking about, which is actually the world that we are living in now. Even though I haven't gone through like a disaster or a major disaster of my own, but we get to watch a lot of these on the news, and I actually work in a medical facility, so I actually see a lot of patients who had gone through a lot of suffering, and sometimes their suffering, you actually don't see an end to the suffering, so it's really very, very terrible. And so I really wouldn't thought people who actually want to escape from this world or want to seek liberation, because it's really, really tough to stay here. But after Master opened our hearts and exposed us to all the suffering and Buddha's teachings, I think myself and I believe that all the brothers and sisters here, it would be impossible for us to ignore what's going on around us and just focus on our own liberation. Yeah, so I think, and not just ourselves, I am very thankful for all the brothers and sisters around me who have given me a lot of guidance, advice, and encouragement throughout this journey, and made me walk the path with joy and peace. Yeah, in particular, I'd like to mention Sister Jane, who was actually the sharer at the weekend Wisdom at Dawn 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so we actually underwent the Tzu Chi Commissioner training together, and we're still undergoing. Initially she came to me and then she asked like, shall we be like buddies, to go through this training together and make sure that we attend all the sessions and go through all the training and all. Yeah, so I must confess that I wasn't the most enthusiastic student initially. Yeah, but so very感恩 to her to drag me along and encourage me to learn. Yeah. And she also fetched me to Xun Fa Xiang every morning. And then after that, she even fetched me to work. Okay, so really very 感恩, and we got to know each other a lot better. And we share our innermost thoughts with each other and give each other advice. Yeah, in a very dharmic way, since we are like learning from Tzu Chi, right? Yeah, so, and not just Sister Jane, but like many brothers and sisters around me, I think, like what Brother Joe shared about the manifestations of Buddhism, right? Yeah, I think like they are all like manifestations happening right in front of my eyes and allow me to see the Dharma more clearly, and to learn a lot of things that I wouldn't have been able to learn on my own or experience on my own. So, yeah, so I guess this is the importance of Fa Qing, like our family in the Dharma, and so very, very 感恩 to be in this, to be able to join Tzu Chi and learn from everyone. So yeah, lastly, I'd just like to thank 感恩 for this opportunity to reflect on my journey through Tzu Chi at such a timely juncture, before we go back to attend the commissioner ceremony end of the year. To me, I think I feel that it's as if I'm just taking my first step into the war zone that's so frightening to me. And right now, I think with all the brothers and sisters around me and a lot of bodhisattvas who had walked the path before me and paved the way, I no longer feel so scared, and I have a lot more confidence, and I hope that we will all be able to walk this path with a lot of joy and peace. Yeah, so that's my sharing for today. 感恩.
Okay, thank you. So if I get this right, really, from the sound, from the voice, you must be you seem to be full of energy and joy and very highly spirited, and that's wonderful, because we can't see you and we can only use our imagination. And this is not something that's beyond our imagination, as we have talked about today. this is something that we can imagine, especially, and I must take great appreciation to how Singapore, how this group has gathered together. And as I have seen a picture of a surprise party that was thrown, that was to celebrate, and I can see that it was full of youth and full of life. And the most important part is full of joy. And the most important thing is whether this is part of the dream that sister was sharing about, or it was something that we're walking right. To never forget about this joy, to always feel that the true joy in ourselves is when we found something that we've been looking for, or when we have found the missing piece. As I mentioned in my own sharing, that for the 3 days that I thought that I was without Dharma, the happiest time comes when I know when I was on the 4th day, when I was able to return. And from that on, it gave me a new idea and feelings about what it meant to sit in that audience, to be able to see and hear and feel that entire feeling. So it's almost like born again. So the same idea. That's what sister, I think it was sister Xing said, that it's more important that once our hearts are open, that we get to see things that we probably didn't get to realize before. And that was a wonderful, very insightful sharing. Thank you, especially in your occupation, in the medical expertise, in the medical field. You probably get to see more now. And we hope that with your expertise, you will be able to save more people, either both spiritually and also physically. And once again, welcome home, and we hope to see you. Singapore, I think, should be 2nd or 3rd. I'm not sure, but in Taipei. And in very short time, you're going to be coming back to Huang. And I think it's very important to be in this place, to feel, because it is not just the reward body. It's not even just the manifestation, coming out of Dai Tai or as presented by the brothers and sisters. It's always different when you go to the root of it. It's not just the words anymore. It's not just the representations. It's actually itself. And it's more, as I mentioned last week. So if people ask you, what is Tzu Chi? You could reply and respond as, oh, that logo, or oh, that uniform, or that's Master Cheng Yen. But what is Tzu Chi? Well, the answer is Tzu Chi is. It just is. It's more than what we have come to understand, because we have not yet really understand the complete what Tzu Chi really is, just like Dharma. So continue on, and it's always good to have buddies. It's always good to have families in Dharma, so that we can learn together and piece together this huge, great puzzle that we are beginning to see. Okay, great, and thank you. Such cheerful voice, and I'm sure the smile must be just as bright as the sunshine itself as well. And we will be seeing you coming back, and welcome home, okay? So now we're gonna go on to today's questions. So the first question, as I've already repented, there doesn't seem to be a different interpretation. The only different interpretation there was my own mistake. So there doesn't, so that goes for the first question. And the second question is, let's see. As we know, only Jing Abode is practicing zero aircon. Can help us to elaborate why Master Cheng Yen has such persistent practice. Let me tell you a secret. No, we do have aircon here. So it's not zero aircon. It's just that most of us, including Master and all the Dharma masters of the abode here, don't use it. I mean, we do need a huge freezer that require constant air conditioning. We also have a server room that needs to be air conditioned. We also have the audio and video equipment room that need to be air conned. So no, we are not so ideologically extreme that we are out of practice with this world. But at the same time, this is something that Master Cheng Yen really believed in that if we are trying to promote a particular ideology, that we must first ourselves do it, okay, and make sure that it's doable, it's workable, and all the places that we can do, we will try to follow that ideology. So one very simple story that I've often shared with people was, as you know, that Master is a person that cares very water. So the idea that the water itself is very precious was deeply ingrained in her mind, and she always tells us to save the water, to reduce the usage of water and save the water as well as the electricity and all of that. So, but as you know that her health or her physical health itself isn't always top shape. So there were people actually coming from different parts of the world. When they come back to Huang, and this is not to tell you that you should do this, but when all these people coming from different places, they would always, they hear that there are these wonderful medicine, and then they would get a bunch of that, and they will come back and give it to Master and say, this will help you. And they all meant well, and they all meant really good. And I'm sure it must have helped them or somebody they know for them to really believe that this will help Master. So they all bring this back. And so one of the sisters coming from the US, and this is, doesn't mean that US is always bringing bad things back or they're just very filial. It doesn't mean anything. It's just that this person coming from the US. So she brought back, what she brought back was a particular aromatherapy that when combined with hot water and in a bucket, and you could dip your feet into, so it helps the entire circulation of body. At the same time, it helps with the aroma to coming out. And so it's a complete healing process. And so the sister came back with this product and was telling Master how this is very good for her health. And as you know, Master, being very nice, listened and smiled, and I have no use for this, and walked away. Now, as disciples, obviously we care about the health of our Master very much. So therefore, she persisted. She's like, well, I don't think I explained this well enough. Let me try it again. So she ran up and said, but Master, this is really good for you, and you need this. We need you. This is very important. So it goes on the benefits, and Master just smiled and just walked away and said, nah. But then, the sister, obviously being the persistent that every one of us is, she continued and rushed up again and said, this is important. So finally, Master thought that it's important to set her straight and explain to her why. So she stopped, looked at her and said, so you mean to tell me that while more than half of the people in the world cannot even use the water that is in one glass, you expect me to put my feet in this water so that I can have an easier life? And so that was the reason. The reason wasn't that she didn't care for her health. The reason wasn't that she didn't believe what she was selling. No, it was because you can't do this when you already feel for the pain for all those people that have not. They don't have this. So she can't put her own feet, dip her feet in this bucket of water just for her own health. And she knew that more than half the people in the world don't even have the luxury of having that water to drink. And that's not something that she can do. So it's the same idea. Okay, so question 3 is also very similar. And I guess it's because it's getting very hot from whoever that was asking the question. And that's why it's all about the air conditioning. So the question 3 is, please advise, if Tzu Chi's schools have air conditioning, public will question us that Tzu Chi is promoting vegetarian and recycling to combat climate change issue. On the other hand, we're installing aircon indoor. How should we handle with such question? So how should you handle these questions? Well, Tzu Chi school and the schools and Tzu Chi universities, most of the classrooms don't have aircon. Ventilation, we have fans and we have windows. So we try to do as much. And if you see our school's construction, it's all very open. It's all very promoting the air circulation and the ventilation. So that we try to be as natural as possible. And we share this value with our students as well. However, there comes a time when there are going to be some rooms, special rooms like computer lab or whatnot, or particular laboratories that require air conditioning. As I mentioned, we have our ideals, but we can't leave the world. This is what Sister was talking about between the great vehicle and between the vehicles. I don't want to say, big or small or anything like that. It's just different ways of thinking about this. In order for us to be among the people, we need to do things that will also be able for us to fit in among the people. Now, it doesn't mean that we change our ideology. It just means that we have to be extra careful and extra vigilant when it comes to these issues. So we turn them off when we don't need them, and we only put them at where we need it the most. If we don't need it, then we can do without it. That was the idea. So it goes back to not about the climate change. It goes back to what Master says. Do you need this? If you need this, then it goes on without saying. But if you just want it to have a more comfortable life so that you don't feel sticky, so that you don't have sweat coming out, so everybody can calm down and all of that, that's different. It all comes back to the heart. Our school of cultivation and practice is about the mind and the heart, and how we don't have to let it be disturbed when it comes in contact with all the people with all the different opinions, how we are able to do that. As long as we have the confidence and faith in ourselves that we are doing the right thing. Yes, we're promoting vegetarianism, and yes, we're doing recycling to combat climate change issue. On the other hand, how would the public say? Well, let's see. Have the public also be doing the same thing that we have been doing to combat climate change. Let's start with that. Let's not go step and let's not go right away and say, well, you didn't do this. Well, what about the things that we have already done? Let's focus on the things that we already done. There are things that we cannot do without. The computer labs, yes, we can. We don't have to have air conditioning in those computer laboratories, and our equipment will just go bad, go burned out. Now we have to buy new ones, and then we'll be throwing in all these things in the landfill, or having these metal contaminations in the landfill. Would that be better? So, and then you would say, well, then you don't have to have computer lab. Okay, then we don't have to have computer. We don't have to have all these technology. Then we have to have a university. It doesn't go like that. If you want to be in among the people, you have to adapt. And that's what this is about. Remember today, Master also said in the morning Dharma talk that you have to go through different, depending on the capacity of the people, that we have to adapt. Or at least Buddha have already adapted, right? For the ones that are more keen, or for the ones that are slower or dull to understand, you have to use stories and use different ways. So the same thing. How do we come back to our heart and realize, is this something that's needed or is this something that is wanted, right? Vegetarianism, many people that chose not to be vegetarian, it's not because they don't feel that they don't want to protect the earth. It's because they can't let go of the taste. And imagine that. It's not about vegetarianism itself. It's about the heart, what is needed and what is wanted. So once again, we are not issue-driven. We are origin-driven. We are driven at the origin. Why did you want to do this? Start with why. And once you go there, it's much more wider, the issue. It's not just air conditioning. It's not even just about climate change. It's about how and who we want to be. So I hope that has answered the question. I don't want to go into deep about air conditioning, indoors, etc. It's more about our heart and mind. And this, at the end of the day, is a place of cultivation. And that's something that we should always remember, that how we can deal with all the sounds and feedback coming from all the different places. So thank you. And this has been another very inspiring session from your sharing and from your input. And once again, let us continue. And we'll be here again next week, and hoping that for the following week, everybody, we can all come together and listen to the Dharma and have it and receive it and feel it in our heart and in our blood, in our veins. And we were able to breathe it and feel it and live it. And I think that's what Dharma really is. It's part of our lives. So thank you. And I hope that everyone has a great, wonderful weekend ahead and having a very safe and wonderful and not so hot days. Thank you all, and goodbye.
Okay, 感恩 Brother Joe and Sister Xin Qing for sharing lots of life wisdom. Thank you, Pusas, for the presence today. Hope that each of us could sustain the Dharma joy and take in another piece of Master's and Hualien love to our life. Let us please make 3 bows to the Buddha and Master Cheng Yen as we depart to apply these teachings in our daily lives. Let us pay respects to the teachers of life's universal truth. Let's put our palm together. First bow, second bow, third bow, and a bow to our beloved Sifu who could join us today. 感恩 everyone. Bye.